innate defense system, which is the non-specific part of your immune system. So, first and foremost, let's talk about what a pathogen is. We've been talking about viruses and bacteria during disease DQ2, and a pathogen is anything that can cause disease. So this is going to increase, to things like fungi and even some worms in some cases, and parasitic worms and things like that. Dr. Robert Koch was the first person to establish kind of the rules for determining what microorganism causes what disease. And these are known as Koch's postulates. Basically, and they're still used today. What makes it difficult when you have to kind of think about, let's say there's a new disease. Somebody comes into the hospital sick. It's nothing anyone has ever seen before, or maybe the symptoms are a little bit different, and you have billions of microorganisms inside of you. So it was very difficult to figure out what microorganism was causing a specific disease until Robert Koch came up with his postulates. And the way this works, and it makes it pretty simplistic when you think about it, but let's say you've got a dead mouse here, and you basically take, so this says mouse dead from anthrax, but let's just assume that you don't know what killed this mouse. So you would take a blood sample and you would culture that, right? So you'd put it on a petri dish with agar on that, and you would get colonies of probably several different types of microorganisms. And you would then take one of those colonies and inject it into a healthy mouse, and that mouse would die, from with similar symptoms, right? You would then take blood from that healthy mouse and culture that, and you should get the same, whatever this colony was that you took, you should get the same one out. So you could microscopically look at those. They should be the same bacteria. And if that's the case, then you know that this bacteria caused that disease in the original mouse. So that's how it kind of works. And they still, again, use that today to identify unknown diseases in humans. So with the non-specific diseases, or non-specific defenses, what that means is that these are defenses that your body has that it doesn't matter what the invader is. It could be a virus, could be a bacteria, could be a fungus, could be anything. These are the defenses that are going to try and take care of those invaders before your heavy-hitting immune system cells even come into play. So the first line of defense is a non-specific defense. These are barriers, right? Your skin, your mucous membranes, so the mucous membranes inside your nose, the mucous membranes inside your throat, that trap particulate matter and obviously invaders. Your skin obviously just being a barrier and keeping things out, but even your skin's byproducts like sweat, oils, waxes, those are going to keep things from getting inside your body. Your tears, and even your stomach itself with its high acidity or low pH is designed to destroy anything that might make you sick. Now obviously, if it was 100% effective, we wouldn't need any other defenses, but it's not, right? So what happens if an actual pathogen gets through those defenses, right? Gets inside your body. What happens after that? Well, we call it the non-specific immunity. And there's three different responses, or three different items that trigger if something actually gets inside your body. And that is the inflammatory response, the temperature response, and different types of proteins that are designed to try and attack and at least slow the invasion of this pathogen. So we'll go through these. The inflammatory response is basically a series of steps that try to keep the infection at bay and help speed up healing. So the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to release histamine. You may have, like people who are allergic to things. We'll talk about allergies. Well, maybe now is the best time. An allergy to an object or a substance is really your immune system being overreactive to something that is not actually a pathogen. So it's your body thinking it's being invaded by something when it's a harmless substance. Like let's say if you're allergic to pollen. Pollen is not an invader. It's in the air, obviously released by plants. But, let's say that gets into your nose and your nonspecific immune system is like, whoa, what is that? And it starts attacking. It starts going through the inflammatory response. And histamine basically increases blood flow, which causes mucus buildup, swelling. It could result in pain. So here comes this pollen grain, gets inside your nose, and histamine is released and causes you to become congested. It makes you feel like you have a cold. It's the same kind of response, which is why they feel similar, which is also why we take medicines that are antihistamines, which try and reduce the amount of histamine being released and thus reducing the side effects to that. So, but let's just say this is a real invader. First thing that's going to happen is histamine is going to release, which is going to increase blood flow and attracts special types of white blood cells called phagocytes. Phagocytes basically are engulfing cells. They come in and they just try to gobble up everything. So that's kind of the second part of this, is phagocytes will come in and just start ingesting and destroying any kind of foreign pathogen, even possibly infected cells. And they keep doing this. The phagocytes will keep doing this until they die. And it's actually the buildup of those phagocytes and dead cells and dead pathogens that causes pus and that you might see like if you have an injury. Pathogens are destroyed by the white blood cells, the phagocytes. And the most common types of white blood cells that are phagocytic are the neutrophils, the macrophages, and the natural killer cells. So let's go through those. The neutrophils are most abundant type of white blood cell in your body. They just circulate around in the blood and can actually squeeze into tissues. They squeeze through the capillary walls and ingest pathogens that they find. Macrophages are basically white blood cells that are kind of like almost like guard cells. They're in specific areas in the body, in the tissues, and they just are sitting there waiting for pathogens to come in, and they start gulping them up. And then natural killer cells are these kind of large white blood cells that they use. They cause the cells to basically go through apoptosis. They attack these cells, and the cells burst and are destroyed. It's these natural killer cells that are also pretty effective at destroying cancer cells. And when we talked about cancer, we talked about immunotherapy, which is really trying to train your own immune system to attack cancer, and specifically it's these natural killer cells that we're training. This is just a picture kind of showing all of the pieces at work here, so I'll just kind of point some things out. So you've got like a cut. These are bacteria or some sort of microorganism that is, maybe it was on the surface of the skin, or was in maybe the nail that you stepped on that caused the injury. So what's going to happen is these mast cells here are the things that are going to release histamine. So as they get triggered, they explode, they release histamine. this causes plasma to leak, so it increases that blood flow to the area, causes this plasma to leak into the tissues, which is what causes like the swelling. You know, if you get like a cut, you'll see swelling and redness around the cut. It's from these mast cells that are exploding and releasing the histamine. You've got neutrophils squeezing out, so they're in the bloodstream. They squeeze through these little capillary walls. They get into the tissue and just start engulfing everything. And that's kind of the inflammatory response. Obviously, we're missing, you know, the macrophages here and the natural killer cells in this particular picture, but that just kind of gives you an idea of kind of what happens. Another non-specific response is the temperature response, which is a fever. So when you get a fever, really it's a reaction to an invader. It's not a specific invader. It's your body senses that there is an infection or an invader in the body, and your body is actively fighting it. And it's actually really the release of the histamine, so that gets into your bloodstream. That goes eventually to your brain, and your brain starts recognizing as the buildup of histamine increases. You also, it starts to increase your body temperature. And what does that do? Well, causing an increase in body temperature speeds up your white blood cell activity, but it also slows bacterial growth. At least that's the idea. Now, there are some invaders that aren't affected like that with a raise in temperature, which is why some infections can get dangerously high fevers, because your body's going to try to keep raising that temperature until the amount of histamine starts to reduce, which is of course why we have fever reducing medicines and things like that. And finally, proteins circulate in the blood, and when they basically encounter a pathogen, they become active. And these proteins include, probably the most well-known one is something called the interferon. These proteins are basically, they're released by usually dying cells that have been invaded or destroyed by an invader. They release kind of their last gasp. They release this chemical protein that basically alerts all of the cells around that cell to basically defend themselves. So they might change their protein markers. It also alerts your white blood cells so that they can come to the area. So I always call it the kind of the Paul Revere of your immune system. So it kind of runs around and tells everybody that there's an invasion about to happen or currently happening. Got a quick video for you. Well, it's not super quick, but it's a really good summary of everything and gives a lot of good
You may not know it, but your body is engaged in a never-ending battle. You are literally covered in staph and strep and E. coli and all sorts of dubious characters that are intent on using you and your body's many resources to feed themselves, find shelter, and reproduce as much as they want. And hey, we all gotta make a living, but it is not your job to give these guys a free lunch. So your body has developed a 3-part policy toward these shady customers, and its enforcement is handled by your immune system. The immune system is different from all the other systems we've talked about this year in that it's not a specific tissue organ system kind of system. Instead, it involves a whole bunch of different tissue groups, organ systems, and specialized but widely distributed defense cells. Together, this league of extraordinary substances joins forces to perform all of the defense functions your body depends on to keep you alive in an incredibly germy world. And the first line of defense in this never-ending battle, that's your innate or non-specific defense system. Like your average frontline soldier, it's prepared to immediately engage with anyone suspicious, and it mostly includes stuff we were born with, like the external barricades of your skin and mucous membranes, and internal defenses like phagocytes, antimicrobial proteins, and other attack cells. But some enemies must be fought with special forces, and here your body can deploy your adaptive or specific defense system, which is more like your SEAL Team 6. It takes more time to call in, but it's specially designed to go after specific targets, and it keeps files on those bad guys so it knows how to handle them next time around. But today we're going to focus on your innate system and look at how it uses an arsenal of physical and chemical barriers, killer cells, and even fever to keep you healthy, proving that sometimes the symptoms we associate with illness are actually the signs that we're healing. Just because something is simple doesn't mean that it can't be elegant. I mean, your body is capable of some incredibly sophisticated things, including defending itself from infection. But occasionally, there's something to be said for brute force. And a lot of your innate immune system's functions aren't exactly subtle. For example, your body's very first line of defense is a simple physical barrier. And it works. Like a wall around a fortress, your skin does a fantastic job of keeping out all manner of malevolent microorganisms. As long as that tough, keratinized epithelial membrane doesn't get torn open or busted up too much, you could probably, like, make snowballs out of raw sewage and still be all right. Although, no. Your many mucous membranes also provide a handy physical barrier. You'll remember that they line any cavity that opens up into the germy outside world, including the respiratory, digestive, urinary, and reproductive tracts. Not only do your skin and mucosa supply simple physical protection, they also pack some serious chemical weaponry. Eat some questionable leftovers for lunch? Don't worry, your stomach is literally filled with acid, so you probably are covered. Walk face first into your coworker's nasty sneeze cloud? No worries, your nasal passages can whip up a tissue box worth of sticky mucus to help trap viruses before they enter your lungs. You've also got bacteria-fighting enzymes in your saliva and lacrimal eye fluid, and peptides called defensins in your skin and membranes that help keep bacteria and fungi from setting up shop around inflamed or scraped skin. Which, no matter how careful you are, you're gonna get one way or another. Maybe you shave with a dull blade, or you just brush your teeth too hard, and don't get me started about the dangers of bagel cutting. So when you've breached that first simple line of defense, it's time to call on your second line of internal innate defenses. This is where your body starts pulling strategic maneuvers like firing up a fever, releasing chemical signals, causing inflammation, or other defensive tactics that help identify and attack infectious invaders. Some of the first defensive cells on the scene are your phagocytes. Their name literally means to eat, and like Pac-Man, they indiscriminately chase down intruders and gobble them up. And they come in a few different varieties. First, you got neutrophils, which are the most abundant type of your white blood cells. They kind of self-destruct after devouring a pathogen, and in fact, you've probably seen piles of their little dead bodies, because that's what pus is made of. But the bigger, tougher phagocytes are the macrophages. They're derived from monocyte white blood cells that have moved out of the bloodstream to occupy tissues, and some are free types that patrol tissues looking for creepers, while others are fixed, attached to fibers in specific organs, devouring anything suspicious that passes by. So when a macrophage, in say the finger I just cut slicing a bagel, sees a new bacterium coming along, it snares it using cytoplasmic extensions, reels it in, completely engulfs it, and essentially digests it and spits the rest out. And unlike neutrophils, it can do this over and over again, like a boss. But not all your defense cells are phagocytic. You've also got cells with what is by far the awesomest name of any cell in the body, the natural killer cells. You can call them NK cells if you want to, but like, why would you do that? Anyway, these tiny assassins patrol your blood and lymph looking for abnormal cells, and are unique in that they can kill your own cells if they are infected with viruses or have become cancerous. How can they tell? A normal, healthy human cell contains a special protein on its surface called MHC1, or Major Histocompatibility Complex. But if it's infected, it stops making that protein. And if an NK cell detects a defective cell, it doesn't swallow it whole like a macrophage. It pokes it with an enzyme that triggers apoptosis, or programmed cell death. Pretty awesome. So those are some ways your innate immune cells handle their enemies, but how do they know where to look in the first place? So let's talk strategery. So say you're in a banana factory and you slip on a banana peel and you scrape your knees. Your outer fortress has been breached and the pathogens are just flooding in like orcs through Helm's Deep. Banana factories are very dirty places. Now your body wants to contain the spread of pathogens, clean up the mess, and get healing as quickly as possible. So it cues up your inflammatory response. This is basically an internal fire alarm, only it uses chemicals instead of sirens to get the message across, and instead of smoke and fire, you sense redness, swelling, heat, and pain. For example, in the event of injury, specialized mast cells in your connective tissue send out histamine molecules, and histamine is great at calling in the cavalry. For one thing, it causes vasodilation, which creates redness and heat at the site of the injury. Now, those things might freak you out a little, but they're actually signs of healing. The increased temperature, for example, ratchets up the cell's metabolic rate so they could repair themselves faster. Meanwhile, histamines and other inflammatory chemicals also increase the permeability of blood vessels, causing nearby capillaries to release protein-rich fluids. This causes swelling, which again is actually a good thing because that leaked protein helps clot blood and form scabs, while the lymphatic system sucks up and filters that extra fluid, cleaning it up before putting it back into your bloodstream. And of course, like chum to sharks, an inflamed knee is also going to attract a bunch of local phagocytes, which find it easier to escape your now leaky capillaries, and lymphocytes that are also flowing freely, helping to destroy pathogens while also cleaning up dead cell wreckage. And don't forget, during during all this, the neutrophils have been doing their best, but they were the first wave to arrive, so by this time, they're starting to die in heaps. They're triggered when the injured knee skin cells release chemicals that begin leukocytosis, the release of neutrophils from the bone marrow, where they're made, into the bloodstream. To attract the neutrophils to the damaged area, inflamed endothelial cells in the capillaries send out chemicals that act like homing devices. And when the neutrophils arrive, they cling to the capillary walls near the injury, flatten themselves out, and squeeze through the vessel walls to get to work. Your big monocytes eventually roll up to the battle and transform into hungry macrophages, replacing the first line of now dead neutrophils and basically just eating up any lingering enemies and then cleaning up the carnage. Now, all this works pretty well in most circumstances, but you may have noticed with a more major injury or an especially nasty virus or infection, sometimes your local troops get overrun. When white blood cells and macrophages run into more foreign invaders than they can handle, they let loose pyrogen chemicals that tap the hypothalamus and raise your body's thermostat, calling in a systemic fever to burn everything. The resulting temperature rise increases the metabolism of your cells so they can heal faster, and it also tells the liver and spleen to hold on to all of their iron and zinc so those things can't contribute to bacterial growth. But even then, sometimes you find yourself facing a more formidable foe. That's when you call in the specialists, your adaptive immune defenses. And to learn exactly how they save the day, you have to watch next time. But for now, you learn that your immune system's responses begin with physical barriers like skin and mucous membranes, and when they're not enough, there are your phagocytes, the neutrophils and macrophages. You also learned about natural killer cells and the inflammatory response, and watched as all of these elements saved the day when you slipped on a banana peel. Thank you to our headmaster of...
All right, so that is our first slideshow for immune system, which is the non-specific defenses. Hopefully that all kind of made sense, and hopefully if you have any questions, you will ask them when I am back in class.